Mark, one thing with Ascension that we always talk about, whether it's at conferences or within our teams, is team building. So we always go in and help churches build structure in order to build healthy teams, healthy team culture. One thing that we don't really talk about ourselves and within the church is protecting our teams. So when we're building teams where late nights at rehearsals, families are letting husband or wife, be away from the family dynamic, a couple times a week. And we're trying to build things, but not necessarily protecting things at the same time. So would love to just kind of dive into what this looks like. I mean, now on more of a global stage, we're seeing just a lot of affairs within the church, and how can we safeguard and create boundaries that help prevent that from occurring. So would love to just kind of dive in on a team ideas. So
right, and it wasn't that long ago that Ascension, as we started to travel more as a big team, that we put into place some things, and we did it really out of more of a protection for the resources God put in our not control, but under our guidance. And so we, as we started traveling and renting houses and going to conferences and putting people in the shared space together, we set some boundaries with, males on one floor, females on another, and we'll spend time together as a team. But when that break happens and the one gender goes upstairs and the other one goes downstairs, there's a hard line there that doesn't get crossed. Yep. And we put that in place. We created a letter. And talk about the letter a little bit.
Dude, I love that. And I think you're the one that mentioned it during that time, was just like, we're not just asking the person involved to make this commitment. We want the spouse at home to understand what that commitment is. So we had a letter that we wrote out just saying, hey, first of all, thank you for allowing your spouse to be involved in what God's doing with Ascension. But as we're gone away, we want you to know that here's some safeguards that we've put in place so that you can feel comfortable that while your spouse is away, this is a top priority. Because there's nothing more that will tear down a team than letting a little bit of that bad yeast into that dough, and it can just ruin it. Just when we think God's doing a mighty move and we don't have these safeguards in place, it can really tear down a team. So I loved being able to send that out just so that they understand the commitment and that we recognize the enemy is at work.
Absolutely. And the spouses of our team are just as much a part of our team as what you and I are together. And the interactions that we might have in front of people are paralleled by the interactions we have behind the scenes with our spouses. Yep. And so if my wife doesn't feel comfortable in knowing that I'm not going to be in a car alone with another female, that we're not going to run to Publix and pick something up as just a male-female team, that we're going to put a third person in that mix, or we're going to send all females or all males to go, and we're not going to leave somebody back at the house that's on an island alone.
And it costs more money to do that. There's been many times we've had to rent multiple vehicles so that we have options.
Yeah, definitely. Small price to pay.
It is. So I love that we've been able to see the benefit of that. And, Ascension is not a church. We're a parachurch organization. But I think just diving into the church dynamic, I mean, a lot of times, the staff is being asked to already work 40 hours a week like a normal job. But, when there's big performances coming up, there's late night rehearsals, there's, everybody's running super thin on an already 40-hour week. So how are some ways that the senior pastor can look in on the health of the team and to help prevent some of these things from happening? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the pastor has to, first and foremost, be willing to shepherd his flock and protect those outliers wherever they might happen, and it might be something as simple as the number of people in a building after an hour, whatever that hour is, the number of times that you're up late at night working on something, just judging whether or not it's what's being sacrificed to get to the goal is really worth what the goal is presenting.
That's really good.
You know, not allowing a male and female to meet behind closed doors together. You know, if you're building out a space, not putting a closed door that doesn't have a window in it that you can see through from the outside anyway.
Yep.
You know, just simple stuff.
A church that I was a part of a couple of years back had the, obviously don't get in a car with the opposite sex, even if you're running up the store real quick to grab something. They had an open door policy, so there's no reason for a door to be closed.
Right.
And definitely in the worship world, like, we were talking earlier, like it's already for a vocalist on a Sunday morning, a volunteer that's singing, you're already very vulnerable in your gifting and hoping you sound good. And, it's nerve-wracking at times, whether you're playing an instrument or you're singing. So it's very easy on the emotional side to start getting a connection. So from worship leader who says, oh man, Gina, you did a great job today, man, awesome. I think we forget sometimes the connections on the emotional side that starts happening.
Right.
And being able to recognize that by having accountability within ministry, from whether it's the pastor looking in or, one thing like when Chad and I would travel together, there's never a time that just one of us travels somewhere. So we're always going together, because there's times where when you're at conferences, you're constantly talking to people, but I need to know that maybe I'm not seeing something and he is. And it's just important to have that accountability. But I think we just don't realize the emotional state that happens within the teams when you're trying to build, within the organization. And
I also think that there's the other side of that as a leader, if I'm going to accept a role as a leader, then I need to also make a definitive line that I'm going to operate within the role that I'm accepting also. And so when Jan and I got married, we got married quite a while ago now.
A couple of years back.
At 19, it was like yesterday. We sat down, I remember it was two nights before we got married, and we were there in our parents' basement in front of a fireplace, and we were talking, and we made the definitive line in the sand of, we are not going to cheat on each other. If we get to the spot where one of us are thinking about doing something stupid like that, then we're going to separate before we take the other person down that path with us. So as a leader, I think that you need to make that definition in your leadership that I'm not going to go down this path. And if I get presented with something, I know what my answer is now before I'm presented with it.
Yeah. I think also it's very easy to make decisions because it's for the church. And I think a lot of pastors, worship leaders, staff members put the church first before the family.
Sure.
From all the events that are happening to, I've got to do it. Pastor's asking me to be up there.
Innocently.
Yes. And it's for good.
Right.
But what it's doing to the family dynamic at the house, you're driving wedges into that. Yeah. So the affair doesn't just, sometimes it happens last minute. It's a quick decision you might be faced with, but I also think it can be years in the making of the divide between you and the spouse.
Right.
That, pastors feel isolated and then given a counseling session or whatever it may be. But I think it starts back with the, neglecting the family dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. We've both been in situations in local church where we spent hours upon hours, from working our 40 or 60 or whatever hour work week it is, and then going and working, another, let's throw a couple hours in tonight. I'll do a couple tomorrow night. Next thing I know that I've been at the church 10 hours this week before going in on the weekend to actually do the service. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And all innocent for a good cause, getting stuff done, but driving a wedge between the home life and the church life.
Yeah. Just kind of talking on, I've walked a lot of people through the affair side of things over the last 10, 15 years, some in the church, some not in the church. I think one of the things that I've heard and I've seen that hurt the most is you don't realize the impact it has on your kids.
Right.
And, we've wanted to talk about this, whether somebody's in the moment thinking about it or you don't ever think it could happen to you. But like, we want to just instill that there's decisions that come off of this that are lasting impact.
Yeah.
And, for one, the enemy wants to steal, kill, and destroy. The enemy wants to get in everywhere he can within that church structure and tear it down.
Yeah.
So I think as pastors, being able to share with the team on a regular basis the importance of it. A friend of ours, Uncle Reese, he had a shirt, man, years ago. I think you probably know what I'm about to say. Years ago, and it said,
"Without Jesus, I suck."
Well, that one, yes, that is true.
Which one are you talking about?
Oh, I'm talking about divorce destroys legacy.
Yes.
And man, I mean, I probably read that back 2012, 2013, and it's just stuck with me. I've shared that with so many people, and I just don't think we understand. Obviously, there's a massive break within you and your spouse, but the legacy that it destroys in your kids, it alters future growth, whether you want to acknowledge it or not.
Right.
And I think that alone is enough that should scare you from everything. Depends how much you love your kids, but.
So how's that played out? I didn't know that shirt affected you like that. How's that played out with your relationship with Crystal and your kids?
Man, well, I love my kids to death. I love my wife to death too. And we, there are certain days that are just, my kids' days.
Yeah.
But I look at my daughter. I mean, she's now 16, so we're getting younger by the minute. But there's what she sees in her dad. For me to make a selfish decision because it gratifies me, what it would do to her and what she sees as the father figure in her life is broken. So if that's not enough to scare the mess out of you,
right.
And then I look at my son, Cohen, he's 14. So, I want him to understand how much I love his mom. And for him to see that dad broke that trust, I mean, that's in the other side of things is I don't want another man teaching my son what it means to grow up.
Right.
So that's what God gave me. So like you said, you decide from day one that you're going to be a man and you're just not going to do it. So I think it comes down to that, but there's times that gets us in positions, and I think it's overworked. It's we allow ourselves to think it's never going to happen.
Right.
But I think sometimes understanding the weight of the decision of your family, but then the family of the church, how much it destroys within the local church that you're called to lead.
So what would you, because it is so prevalent now in leadership and inside the church especially, what would you say to the senior pastor who discovers it's on his team? What's the right reaction?
Be honest. Call it for what it is. Tell the church what happened. I think too much, we sweep it under the rug, and we allow that sin to stay within that organization, within that church.
What if this is the big face that, we're not going to say it publicly in front of everybody, but behind closed doors, that's the person that's bringing people through the doors.
You
and
mean
putting
like
money.
kind of God's called him somewhere else? That kind of thing?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're doing a huge injustice because, for one, he's going to go somewhere else. And honestly, I mean, we're called to be above reproach.
Yeah.
I think when we try and alter the narrative to tell our people, and the root of that is you're afraid of losing people from your congregation.
Right.
You're afraid of donors, big money givers to leave. If that was not the case, if you were not worried about the financial side of things, would you say what happened? In most cases, yes.
Right.
So I think the churches I've seen do it well, the outcome is far better than when they choose to suppress it. It comes out regardless.
Right.
In time. And the devastation that happens to your congregation once they realize that it's been swept, I think is far worse than just being upfront with it.
You know, when they sweep it under the rug at one location, allow that person to leave and go somewhere else and then repeat it elsewhere, all they're doing is perpetuating the hurt that's taken place, not just through one congregation now, but through multiple and spreading across, you know, bigger parts of the city or bigger areas of the country, and just having allowing the devil to win on a bigger scale than what should have or
100%.
could have if it was just squashed.
And here's
right
the
then.
deal. The other side of it is we truly want that person to get healing from it.
Right.
So if it's never brought into the light and things come out, like what was the old saying back in the day, hurt people hurt people. You know what I mean? So you're allowing like that spirit to go into other areas. I mean, it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in all reality, we want that person to get healing from it. And there's no better place to do it than within the family of God.
Absolutely. So following up on when a pastor discovers something like this going on in the team, how soon or when do you think an offending party should be allowed to step back into a leadership role or be on the platform or something of that nature?
Man, honestly, like Mark, I think it's really hard to put a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Like here's the timetable, you know, once you do this, man, you're good to go. You know, I think part of the issue is being if it's a worship pastor, you know, I mean, the stage is their identity. It is everything they know to do. So when this happens, there's this like fight or flight, like, man, I've got to get right.
Right.
You know, because this is my job.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do anything except lead worship. So I'm going to go to these couple meetings. I'm going to go to this retreat center. You know, I've asked for forgiveness. You know, look, my family's fine. See, everybody's smiling. So technically, I mean, I'm good to jump back up on the platform. When actually, that's really the worst thing that could happen. So I don't think there's necessarily a timeline for it. I think that's really where a senior pastor needs to step in. Instead of kicking out and shunning and saying, man, you know, you're done, kind of bringing that person in. And the goal is for that person to get healing.
Right.
So many times we jump back up on the platform way too early without addressing the key issues that have caused it. That way, in a year later, that person leaves the church, he goes to another church. Like it's especially on the worship leader side, because most of them are leaving churches every 2 to 3 years anyways.
Right.
So it's like you're constantly, you know, hiding it, running to the next one. And the problem with that is the pastor hiring that worship leader has been looking for a worship leader for the last 6 to 8 months.
Right.
So here comes this charismatic, you know, highly engaging, great vocal worship leader.
With the best intentions of, I'm not going to let it happen again.
Correct. Or he might not even know.
Right.
And the pastor's so happy that they found somebody that they're not even contacting the last church he was at.
Right.
You know, so it's just it's a vortex that I think is just never ending. So
I like how you started that with it's their identity. And I can't tell you the number of conferences we sat in where leadership people spoke into us and said, what you do is not your identity. You know, my identity is I'm a child of God.
yep.
And when I operate in that, when I sin and I fail around that, I come back to that identity instead of the thing that I do. I'm a technician. I'm a leader. I'm this. I think having to build back that base of I know who I am in God and operate from there instead of I know who I am behind a microphone
Yep.
and operate from that spot.
Just let me get the platform. All is fine.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
I think one way to look at the practical side, kind of dive into more nut and bolts of things, is, we've said like the onboard process on auditions is the first time you get a chance to share about the culture of your team.
Right.
So, this is a hard one because a lot of times we're just praying for God to send the next drummer because we don't have one.
Yeah.
So sometimes we bypass the audition and that onboard process because we need someone so bad, but we're actually like letting the door open and leaving it open for anything to come in and attach itself.
Right.
So when you really look at that audition, it's a time for us to learn about where that musician or vocalist came from. Why did you leave your last church?
Yeah.
I think as leaders, we need to protect the flock, and sometimes that's maybe not letting certain people be a part of that that team.
Yeah.
So I think asking where they're from, following up with the local church that they came from, just to see maybe why they left. Maybe they left because they have a really bad attitude and very prideful.
Right.
It doesn't mean you don't use them, but it gives you a chance to understand their background
And to help them grow.
and how to help them grow.
Yeah.
But it could be worse than that. They could be leaving because of something that happened.
Right.
And now you're allowing that to come into your church. So I think, diving into the onboard process and understanding that they can still be a part of the church, but leadership isn't necessarily for everybody.
Right. Right. And just because you did it at the last church doesn't mean that you're a good fit to do it at the next one. That's one of the things that I really like what Ascension has fostered in learning the pastors and the worship pastors and the leaders in churches around our community. We're not friends with one or two or just a denomination or one small group of people. We've got ties in a lot of churches, most churches in the area really. And to the point of when somebody moves, they may not be coming to your church or my church or anybody else's church on our team, but we usually hear about stuff like that. And just having that relationship in your community of knowing the people in your community that are doing the things that you're looking for will help you understand also, maybe that person's not a good fit on my team. They might be very talented, but they may be toxic in the culture that we're bringing them into if we bring them onto our team.
That's so good.